So I had a whole other video planned to do, and I'll do it, but I could not let the opportunity go by to not talk about that bombshell Politico article that came out about these, quote, young, end quote, Republicans, staffers, one's a state senator, quote unquote, leaders of the Republican Party, kind of like the next gen of fascism here. And Politico reported that for the span of multiple months from this year, by the way, and I also want to score this, 2025, these Republicans, these young Republicans, were texting each other on this platform called Telegram. And I guess they thought stupidly that what they were texting was going to remain anonymous. But what came out was abhorrent, disgusting, racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, misogynistic, and just dumb, and yet accurately truthful and accurately reflective of what the Republican Party stands for these days. So let's look at this article because we got to talk about this. The last line of the article is what I want to start with right now. And this is the last line of the article. Quote, "If we ever had a leak of this chat, we would be cooked FR, end quote. For those of you that need to know, because of course I also need to catch up on slang these days, FR means for real, for real. So I'm going to read it again. Quote, "If we ever had a leak of this chat, we would be cooked for real, for real." And the guy who texted that is totally fucking right. Because what came out was newsworthy. In these multiple texts, these group of young Republicans referred to Black people as monkeys and the watermelon people. They mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who they believed support slavery. And we're going to get into some of the specifics now. So these Telegram chats in this Politico exclusive were obtained by Politico, and it covers 7 months, specifically from January until July/August of 2025. It is 2,900 pages of chats by and between about a dozen millennial and Gen Z Republicans. So it's between early January and mid-August, according to Politico. And what they were trying to do is these group of millennial and Gen Z Republicans were trying to take control of the national young Republican organization. And so these people are from different states, from across the United States. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the people on this chat, this group chat, already work in party politics. They work for, a Republican Party machines in different states. They also work for politicians, current politicians. They used epithets like FAGGOT, the word retarded, and the N-word more than 251 times combined. As one person who's quoted in the article, an analyst was asked, they were basically saying, look, once or twice, maybe, 251 times or more than 251 times, definitely not an accident, right? In terms of an expression of how you feel. Here's one example. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans, also a staffer for the New York Senate Minority Leader Rob Ort, talked about how a mutual friend of some of the people in the chat had dated, quote, this very obese Indian woman for a period of time. Now, the response from Peter Giunta, Giunta, and by the way, I'm going to show their faces in a second. He was or is the chair of the New York State Young Republicans. Giunta responded that the woman, quote, was not Indian. And then this guy, Samuel Douglas, a state senator from northern Vermont and the head of Vermont's Young Republicans, chimes in and says, quote, she just didn't bathe often. I mean, this is what they're saying about an Indian woman. So when I play for you now what J.D. Vance's response was to this Politico article, and by the way, some of these Republicans are claiming, oh, yes, I might have said that, and I'm sorry. Some of them are saying, well, I think they've been manipulated. I don't really know. I can't verify if they're true. I mean, either way, JD Vance actually has the gall, the audacity to now say that why are we condemning these young people? They're just kids and they shouldn't have this, stain on their lives forever, because when you're young and you're dumb, you say stupid shit. And let me tell you something. When I was young, I wasn't saying shit like this. And I definitely wasn't using the N-word, and I definitely wasn't using a whole lot of the racial and sexist and disgusting homophobic epithets that are in these chats. But take a listen to JD Vance. And I want to say thank you right now to some really talented content creators that were able to kind of splice this all together so that you could actually see about whom JD Vance is making excuses. So watch this right now.
But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. By focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat, grow up. I'm sorry. Focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids say in group chats. But there's another angle to this that I just have to be honest about. I mean, I'm like an old guy at this point. I'm 41 years old. I have 3 kids. I grew up in a different world, right? Where not most of the stupid things that I did when I was a teenager and a young adult, they're not on the internet. Like, I'm going to tell my kids, especially my boys, don't put things on the internet. Like, be careful with what you post. If you put something in a group chat, assume that some scumbag is going to leak it in an effort to try to cause you harm or cause your family harm. But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do. And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives. And at some point, we're all going to have to say, enough of this BS. We're not going to allow the worst moment in a 21-year-old's group chat to ruin a kid's life for the rest of time. That's just not okay. Like, we live in a digital world. This stuff is now etched in stone online. We're all going to have to say, you know what? No. We're not doing this. We're not canceling kids because they do something stupid in a group chat.
Our thanks to the talented people at Mother Jones, big fan, that put that together, that we just used. Now, listen, I'm also going to put up on the screen right now, say thanks to my amazing producer, Sydney, something that was done by a guy named Travis Metters. Look at the ages. I mean, this is not all of them, right? But look at the ages of the people. This Peter Giunta guy, 31. William Hendricks, 24. Samuel Douglas, 27. Alex Dwyer, 29. Joe Maligno, 35. These, are they young? I guess. But when is youth an excuse? And more importantly, let's talk about what JD Vance said. So instead of saying, I'm condemning what was done, instead of disavowing it, instead of saying, you should not do that, our youth should be better. Because remember, this is the next generation, quote unquote, of the Republican Party coming up, right? Instead of saying, I am ashamed of what that is and we need to do better, what does JD Vance say? Well, Couch Humper makes excuses and says it's because they're young and that they shouldn't be blamed for what they do as young people, even though, let me be fucking clear. This happened this year in 2025. I'm not saying something that happened 10 years ago when somebody who's 31 was 21. I am saying that it's now, right? And what else does he say? I'm going to tell my children, be careful what you put, my boys, by the way. Isn't that funny? He's telling just his boys. He has, by the way, other children that are not just boys. Be careful what you put or post in a chat because, quote, some scumbag will leak it. How about let's not ever use that type of language or thoughts ever, boys, sons, because that's bad. And that's a horrible reflection of not only you, but who we are raising you as parents. I'm going to say we right now because I'm going to talk about Usha Vance because that not just edgy, offensive joke that JD Vance wants to say about that Indian woman, right? What did they say again? That the Indian woman just didn't bathe often. That's what Samuel Douglas, the state senator from Vermont, said, right? Last I checked, Usha Vance is Indian, right? So JD Vance doesn't have a problem with that. He goes home to his wife, Usha Vance. Usha Vance doesn't have a problem with that. Why is she not stepping forward? Has she suddenly lost her voice? That she can't come out and say, this is fucking disgusting. And as an Indian, I'm offended. But this is fucking disgusting. And no, we're not going to tell our children to be careful what you post in a group chat because one day some scumbag's going to leak it. How about we don't fucking post it to begin with? How about we don't reward the bad behavior by saying, just do a better job of hiding it, please? And then J.D. Vance echoing convicted felon Donald Trump, disgusting, being found liable for sexual abuse Donald Trump, right? Saying that these kids are just using edgy, offensive jokes. A, they're not kids, let me remind you. And B, those are not edgy, offensive jokes. Let's get into some of those other offensive and quote, edgy jokes. Why don't we do that right now, right? In a separate conversation, Peter Giunta, chair of the New York State Young Republicans, shared that on his flight to Charleston, South Carolina, that it had landed safely. And then he offered some advice to his fellow young Republicans. Quote, if your pilot is a she and she looks 10 shades darker than someone from Sicily, just end it there. Scream the no word, Giunta wrote. I'm sorry. Do you remember how after Charlie Kirk died and people were posting videos of Charlie Kirk saying really bad stuff about Black pilots and how they're not, competent or capable to do it because they're just Black and they're just DEI and they didn't have the ability or earn the right to be able to do that? And you remember how everybody started attacking people that were putting those clips up saying, oh, you're misconstruing his words. Oh, you're saying things and taking it out of context. And how dare you, you evil, bad leftists. Sounds like that sentiment about Black pilots seems not to be limited to just Charlie Kirk, huh? What else was said in the group chat? Peter Giunta, this guy, fucking going 10 for 10 here. Giunta said in response to a question posed in the chat if people were watching a basketball game, an NBA game. Giunta says, quote, I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch monkeys play ball. Elsewhere in the group chat, he refers to Black people as, quote, the watermelon people. Because we're going to name them and shame them, folks. Hendricks. William Hendricks, vice chair of the Kansas State Young Republicans, made a similar remark in July, according to Politico. Quote, bro is at a chicken restaurant ordering his food. Would he like some watermelon and Kool-Aid with that? Hendricks was, past tense, a comms assistant for Kansas's Republican Attorney General Chris Kobach until Thursday. He also said in the chat that despite political differences, Hendricks is drawn to Missouri's young Republican organization because Missouri doesn't like FAGGOTS. Well, I'm going to play for you now a clip of my colleague of whom I'm very proud all the time. And that is Adam Mockler. And he did a town hall that was hosted by News Nation at the Kennedy Center in DC. And sitting next to him is a guy named Andrew Colvett. He's a Turning Point spokesperson and now the host of The Charlie Kirk Show. Watch this clip.
Just think about this. We saw these Nazi group chats, which I'm sure you condemn, right? This Nazi group chat.
Well, we can talk about it.
Do you condemn it?
I want to talk about it.
Wait, so when they said gas chambers,
disavow.
When they say gas chambers, you won't. So you're like J.D. Vance. You just won't condemn this?
Well, I actually had J.D. on the show today. We had a whole conversation.
You guys can all condemn this, right?
Hell yes.
Thank you.
Hold on.
All right.
Hold on.
But
Chris, can you condemn that?
Here's the point, of course. But that's easy. What I'm
for him, but you know what?
I mean, this Andrew Colvett guy, Turning Point spokesperson, now host of the Charlie Kirk Show, refused to condemn this horrific group chat. Not only is it on brand, right? But listen, do you not think that it continues to reflect the ethos, the pathos, the mentality, the attitude, the whole philosophy of Charlie Kirk? The Charlie Kirk that suddenly was lionized and what people conveniently forgot what the guy said about women and minorities? But this Andrew Colvett guy, he can't condemn it. Why? Because he can't run afoul of your dear cult leader, your dear Führer, Donald Trump. Because Trump loves this shit, right? When you hear J.D. Vance say that these are just edgy, offensive jokes, that's like felon Trump making excuses for his sexist, horrific things that he says. Like that dumb AI video he did of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer that was racist against the Latino community, but J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson are like, oh, you guys need to get a life. You stupid Democrats, you stupid leftists. Look, let's get back to some of the stuff in this article, right? Because don't look at me. I'm not the one who said it, but let's just see what these people said. Here's another thing, right? This guy, Walker, this Bobby Walker, right, the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans, says at one point in the chat, my people built the train tracks with the Chinese, at one point referring to his Italian ancestors. Let his people go. Joe Maligno, General Counsel, New York State Young Republicans, right? Joe Maligno says, let his people go. Keep the chinks, though. In another instance, Luke Mosiman, the chair of the Arizona Young Republicans, tells the group chat, the Spanish came to America and had sex with every single woman. Sex is gay, Alex Dwyer, the chair of the Kansas State Young Republicans, responds. Sex? It was rape. Luke Mosiman replies, epic, Bobby Walker says. Rape, chinks. I mean, oh, and there's anti-Semitism too, right? This Politico article is wild in how bad it all is. I want to talk around the find out part when you fuck around. So, Joe Maligno, the general counsel for the New York State Young Republicans, turns out the guy's a lawyer. Used to be the associate court attorney to a judge in New York, Mary Kavanaugh. He don't have that job anymore, according to Above the Law. There's another guy, Michael Bartels, senior advisor, Office of General Counsel, Small Business Administration for the Trump administration. He still has his job. He hasn't been fired. He hasn't been let go. He hasn't resigned. In fact, I'm sure he's going to get a promotion. Before you know it, he'll take freaking Lindsay Halligan's job, right? At this rate. There have to be consequences for these things, people. There have to be consequences. And you know how I am about lawyers. You know how I feel about lawyers. I call them the enablers. They are enabling bad behavior. They are going to court and making specious, fake, horrible arguments. They are running cover. They're creating defense. They're going on the offense for Donald Trump and the horrible Republicans. They should be held accountable. Why would you ever want to practice law? I'm going to stay in the legal lane for a second. Why would you ever want to practice law with this Joe Maligno guy or this Michael Bartels guy or any of these people if this is how they are and this is how they think? See, the funny thing is, that I always struggle with this question, and I invite you to respond in the chat if you don't mind, right? In the comment section about this. Were they always like this? And Donald Trump and others have now given them kind of the permission structure to come out and be like this? Did their parents raise them to be like this? Or do they think it's now in vogue and fashionable to be racist and misogynistic and anti-Semitic and horrible? I think it's a combination of both, right? I mean, I'm not going to speak to how they were raised. I can speak to how J.D. Vance is raising his kids. Why? Because by his own admission, this is what he's telling his kids. It's okay to do, just don't get caught. Right? That's what J.D. Vance is saying. J.D. Vance is saying this Politico article about these 2,000 something whatever text messages over these 8 months of time. J.D. Vance is telling his kids, you can do it, just don't get caught. I mean, it's a combination of both, is it not? They are now thinking, you know what? It's not only okay to be this way, but I'm going to get rewarded for it. I'm going to get a job in a presidential administration. I am going to move up the food chain and in the ranks of the Republican Party. Now, I will give credit to certain people like Elise Stefanik, who, when she found out, has condemned this. So did that Senate Minority Leader Rob Ort in New York. He condemned it as well. I mean, there are people that are saying this is bad, but not enough. And in the halls of Congress and in the places of power, people like, Vice President Couch Humper, J.D. Vance, like there should be some consequence and it should be coming from the top. But the fish rots from the head down, and you don't see Donald Trump coming out and condemning this. You didn't hear him saying that this is wrong. And so we sit here in our outrage and our indignance, and I'm just going to leave you with what I think is the attitude that we should all be taking right now when it comes to the GOP. This is Nancy Pelosi.
Why did you refuse the National Guard? on January 6th.
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
Well, hell yeah. That's the type of energy we should have with the GOP now. That's the type of energy I expect at No King's Day on Saturday, October 18th. No King's Day 2.0. I expect to see that type of energy. I expect to see the middle finger being given to the GOP and the Republicans, because we should not give them quarter. When you act like that, you say these things and you do these horrible things, we're not going to give you quarter. We're going to name you, shame you, call you out, and make sure people understand that this is what you're all about. And you can try to pretend, maybe you don't, to be polite in public and in proper society. But when we know what you're all about, we're going to make sure that people know. So you know what? I'm mad, I'm outraged, and I'm demanding accountability. And you should do the same.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.